You
Sure.
have brought Stoicism into the mainstream for at least this generation. You've brought it into pop culture. I don't want to sound condescending to anybody, but could you dumb it down for the people that don't know what Stoic philosophy is? And say, for instance, I can't figure out a great, easy way to explain it to my 16, 13, and 11-year-olds.
So I actually don't think dumbing it down. I think dumbing it down is unfair. I actually think it's the other way around. So I think what has happened is that ancient philosophy has been presented to people in a preposterously inflated, inaccessible, unrealistic way. When we think philosophy, we think, abstract theoretical questions. We think, how do we know whether we have free will? How do we know we're not living in a computer simulation? We think like a turtleneck university professor. We don't think a dentist or a doctor or a merchant or an author or an athlete. We don't think like real people in the real world. And that's really a shame, because in the ancient world, there were no academic philosophers. There were people who had professions and day jobs who tended to just also be interested in philosophy. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, comes to Stoicism. He's a merchant. After a shipwreck, ruins his ship, watches up in Athens and ends up discovering philosophy. Marcus Aurelius is the emperor of Rome, right? Cato, the senator, doesn't write anything down. So why is he considered a Stoic philosopher? It's because of how he lived, the actions and choices that he made that made him a Stoic philosopher, not what brilliant letters or essays he wrote. So my sort of definition of Stoicism, I think this is how the Stoics would define it. I sort of give two things that I think make it clear how simple it is and then a practical is. So I think at the simplest level, the Stoic is saying, I don't control the world around me, but I control how I respond. Like, I don't control other people. I don't control the weather. I don't control the economy, but I control what I do, how I live, the choices that I make. That's to me the definition of Stoicism. What kind of choices do they make? What's the sort of code they live by? There's really just 4 Stoic virtues: courage, justice, moderation, and wisdom. So the pursuit of knowledge and learning, doing things in balance, doing the right amount of the right things, that's moderation. Justice, that's fairness, honesty, serving the common good, making a positive difference. And then courage, we need courage to do those 3 things in a world where those are rare. And we also need courage to face the adversity of life and the difficulties that are inherent within it.
Why do you think then, thank you for that answer, why do you think then that Stoicism is so popular with the uber ultra achievers in the world? Is it because you've repackaged it in a way that we can kind of understand? Or do you think that the tenets of the actual philosophy are grounded in good principles?
It's an interesting question. So in the later days of the Roman Empire, the 2 succeeding generations, the 2 most well-known Stoics were Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius. Epictetus is a slave, and Marcus Aurelius is the emperor of Rome.
Right.
And so here you have a philosophy on the one hand that's helping someone who's a victim of extreme injustice and powerlessness. And then on the other hand, you have someone who holds great power and has an immense amount of burden and responsibility. And it's kind of the balance between the two. So I think what Stoicism actually is kind of an operating system for life. It happens to work well whether you're at the bottom of the hierarchy or the top of the hierarchy or the middle of the hierarchy. But I do think those traits of courage and justice and wisdom and moderation, I do think those 2 correlate with success. I think good character correlates with success. I think they are, in addition to being strategies for happiness and virtue and honor and dignity, they're also strategies for perseverance and creativity and success, just generally, right?
Yeah,
and so, of course, we tend to hear the most about famous Stoics because they have the platform to talk about it, right? But I'm sure there's just as many janitors and stay-at-home parents and, prisoners who are interested in Stoicism as there are professional athletes and presidential candidates.
What initially drew you to Stoicism in the first place? Because it wasn't as mainstream popular as it is now since you've kind of introduced it to this generation.
I think why Stoicism hit me is that, like a lot of people, I was looking for guidance on how to live, what kind of person to be, like an articulation of what sort of good ethics and rules for being a person in the world are. And
Mhm.
we don't have a lot of that anymore, right? Not as many people go to church. Not as many people trust the government. People aren't members of guilds or unions or clubs, or a far larger percentage of the population might serve in the armed forces.
Mhm.
There used to be sort of codes that were pushed upon you that you were sort of raised underneath. And as that's gone away, our need for that guidance has not. And so I think I was looking forward. And I think the reasons my books have worked is that people remain interested in answers to those questions, like, what should I do? What's the good life? What should I not do? What kind of person should I become? How do I become that person?